Hey guys, David Clayton here with GuitarBreakdown.com, and today we're going to break down some Scott Henderson stuff. It's been a while since we did a lesson on Scott's playing. We've done several. We've done some lessons on, some licks that he played. We did a long, like 6-part lesson based on a solo he played, on a live solo that he played over a song called Equinox. If you haven't seen those lessons, click the description below and I will put a link there where you can find all this stuff. And if you're not familiar with Scott Henderson, again, watch those videos and look at the descriptions. We talk a lot about him and praise him endlessly because he's one of our favorite guitar players around here, mine in particular. Love his timing, aggression, the way he mixes blues phrases with jazz. It's just amazing. And again, watch those lessons and if you're not familiar with them, you'll learn a little about them and you'll learn some cool stuff, I hope. But this lesson is a little different than a lot of the lessons we do. This is more about playing melodically, whereas a lot of times we'll break down full solos or we'll break down some complicated licks and try to make them a little more easier if you're not used to playing those kind of things. And hopefully we accomplish that in our lessons. Hopefully we make some things easier for you to play. But this, may appear to be less complex than, say, some crazy fast chromatic lines or whatever. But it's actually just as hard, if not harder, to play melodically because you're left with a lot of open space. And you really have to make the notes breathe and you have to really bring out some expression with those notes. Otherwise, it's going to sound very stale because you're only working with a few notes. The other thing that's really important is timing. And Scott is a master at timing. I mean, that's one of his biggest things. He offsets rhythms all the time. He plays against different drum beats and polyrhythm. He'll play one rhythmic grouping against a different rhythmic grouping, and it's just absolutely amazing what he does. And with this lesson, it's more about taking a few notes and really making them speak and really focusing on vibrato. That's another thing that gets lost in playing fast. You don't really have to really focus on vibrato except for maybe the note that you end on, but all the millions of notes you're playing, you're not really focusing on that. And vibrato is a pretty tricky thing because there's a million different ways you could do it. So we're going to get into all this, and I hope you guys like this lesson. This is based off of a song called Black Cherry off of Tribal Tech's Illicit CD. And again, I'll put a link to that where you can get that. I suggest you buy every Scott Henderson Tribal Tech CD you can get because you're going to learn so much. I can't say enough about it. But anyway, the one other thing I want to touch on is I'm using a new pedal in this lesson, and we're going to do a review. We've actually already done a review, but we will be posting it in the next week or two. It's Alan Hinds' signature pedal by Bob Burt. It's called the AH1 distortion pedal, and it's awesome. It's so good. We will do a review on that, and I hope you stick around for that, but for now, let's get to this lesson. All right, so what we're going to do here is we're just going to walk note for note through pretty much everything that was played in that beginning intro performance part of this solo. The solo goes even longer, but this is the part we're focusing on, obviously. What we're not going to do is a lot of times we talk about like the notes that are being played over what chords. Now this is going through several chord changes. A lot of them are 5-1, 5-1, 5-1 kind of chord changes. But we're not going to really deal with that kind of thing, so we're not going to talk about the intervals and stuff, although I think that's one of the most important things, especially when you want to improvise, to know what intervals you're hearing in your head against the chord. To me, that's really important. But sometimes that gets a bit much. So what we're going to do here is we're going to make it a little simpler by just talking about shapes and patterns and how you can incorporate this into your own stuff. But again, first we're just going to walk note for note through this whole thing. Also, if you haven't, if you like this kind of stuff, please click subscribe. That really helps us out, and click like and all that kind of stuff. And also really help us out by sharing these videos if you can. That really will help us build our audience, which we're really trying to do here. And the bigger our audience, the more we can keep doing this. So thanks a lot for that. Thanks for your support, and let's just get started with this. All right, so the first part of this starts out with the 8th fret on the B string. And it plays that note 3 times. But again, there's a rhythm thing going on here that you're just going to have to feel and hear it. Maybe, if you have this track or this CD, take it, slow it down really slow, and really hear these rhythms. But So then it goes after the 8th fret of the B string. It skips a string and goes to the 10th fret of the D string. And then it skips a string again and goes to the 11th fret of the B string. So you have. And then it does that pattern again without the 3 notes at the beginning. It just goes. Right? And then it slides that 11th fret up to the 13th fret on the B string. So you have. And then when it slides up to that 13th fret, it holds it. And again, this is a great opportunity to use some nice, smooth, round vibrato. Then it just bars the 10th fret on the B string and skips the string and goes to the 10th fret of the D string. So a nice little 6th interval there. So you have. And again, the volume that these notes are being picked, here's all those little tricky dynamic things. They're not all just. It's. Like it gets a little lighter at times, or sometimes I'll hit a note a little harder. Like just one note. So really focus on, you know, those kind of things. And it doesn't have to be played exactly the way he plays it, but all these little intricacies will, if you do focus on them, they'll start creeping into your own playing, which will obviously make you a better player. So. And then he just goes from that 10th fret of the D string and plays the 10th fret again to the 11th fret of the D string. And then he just skips a string on the B string, goes to the B string, plays that 13th fret again, and slides up a half step to the 14th fret. So you have. And then he goes to the 11th fret of the G string, and then he slides that 14th fret up to on the B string to the 16th fret of the B string. So that whole thing one more time is. And then when he slides, and again, all these notes are really ringing out. So add some vibrato, some nice smooth round vibrato, or however you want to do your vibrato. Then he just hits that 16th fret again on the B string. Then he goes down a half step to the, at least that's what it sounds like he's doing. He goes down to the 15th fret of the B string and bends that back up a half step. So, or maybe a quarter step. And then he goes to the 11th fret of the B string. So it's 16, 15 with a little bit of a bend there, a quarter, almost a half step bend, to the 11th fret on the B string. So the whole thing is. Then he goes to the 8th fret of the G string, then the 11th fret of the B string, and slides that up again a whole step to the 13th fret of the B string. And he sits on that note for a minute. And then he goes down from the 9th fret of the B string to the 12, 11 on the G string, and he holds that 11th fret with some vibrato. So the whole thing is. And then after he holds that note out, he walks down that and holds that 11th fret on the G string. He goes down an arpeggio from the 8th fret of the G string, 9th fret of the D string, to the 10th fret of the A string. And and then he slides down a half step from 10 to 9 on the A string. And he plays that 3 times. 3 times. And then he plays the 7 to 8 on the A string. So that whole thing. All right, and that's the end of that phrase. Then he gets into kind of a similar thing here where he goes, which is kind of a motif from the beginning where he did 3 notes. Right, but this time he goes. All right, so now he's playing the 6th fret of the B string 3 times to the 7th fret. So he's skipping a string, going to the 7th fret of the D string. And then he plays that 9th fret of the B string, so he skips back up a string. Then he jumps all the way up here and goes. He plays the 15th fret, or at least that's how I play it, the 15th fret of the B string to the 19th fret of the E string. And he really kind of plucks that. So you have. So I hope you got a lot out of that first part of the lesson. I know we walked through pretty quickly the note for note kind of thing, but just take it really slow, go back and just really work those phrases, work on your vibrato, and hopefully you have this song or this CD, this Scott Henderson CD called Illicit, and again the song's called Black Cherry. If you don't, I'd suggest getting it and then take it and slow it down really slow so you can really hear these phrases, because the other thing you want to try and work on, like we discussed earlier, was the timing. His timing on these phrases is kind of, it's awesome because it's not the same all over the place. They're simple, 3-note phrases played slightly different, but some of them are ahead of the beat. Sometimes in the middle of the phrase, he's on the beat, and then in the middle of the phrase, he jumps to being ahead or behind the beat. And that really adds a lot of life to, just 3 or 4 note phrases. So check that out. If you do like this and you want to see part 2, just look at the description below and you'll find a link where you can go. And we just ask if you, want to see the rest of this and you really like this lesson, to click on the donate button and donate anything, whatever you think this lesson's worth. These take a lot of time to make, a lot of time to learn, to teach, to record, edit, all that kind of stuff. So we do appreciate any donation, big or small, and then we will send you a link to where you can find part 2 of this lesson, where we're going to dive into the rest of this solo note for note. There's a few trickier licks where, again, he kind of plays some outside notes and brings it back in, a cool little pentatonic lick, more melodic phrases, and then we're going to dive a little bit into talking about how you could use this in your own playing, some of these concepts. So I hope you like this, and I hope you check out part 2. Thanks, guys.